We're live. Are we live?
Yep, we just went live.
Okay, I'm
Hello,
going to bring it
everybody.
up. Okay, do you want to do a quick introduction? I mean, you don't know me. This is weird. I should introduce myself. That's what I should do.
I
Okay.
feel like I might have spelt your name wrong. I spelt your last name Soderland. I think I was like, oh, yep, I spelt it wrong. It's Soderland. It's an I, not an A.
You know what I've always liked about that name? It looks like it's terrible for everyone. Everyone gets it Soderling, Soderland, Sutherland. Everyone screws it up, right? But
Yep.
the thing is, it looks to me like a composer name. Because every composer name I know of, even if it like supposedly makes sense in their own, language, they all look weird. And so many of them sound like other words. Like Chopin sounds like Chopin, or looks like Chopin. Handle is like a handle on something. List is, well, like a list, like a shopping list. And there's all these jokes like, I went down to the shop to buy a handle with my shop because it said that on my shopping list and shit like that. So I like the idea that it bodes well for me becoming a great composer, which is probably never going to happen. Anyway, I don't know if this interests anyone. Have we got anyone in the chat? Have we got anyone viewing?
Actually, right now it seems like nobody is viewing. So when I said hello, everybody, it's mainly for the people who are going to watch in a couple days or whatever.
I see. Okay.
The only time I ever got above 10 viewers live was when Bering decided that he was going to start drama with Michael Rowlands, who I was talking to at the time.
Oh. Yeah, Michael Rowlands and Bering, they're actors in drama, shall we say. They're like Shakespearean thespians when it comes to drama.
Well, I mean, I kept kicking Bering out of the chat because I thought it was fucking hilarious, and then a few people thought it was like Michael. I'm like, no, Michael didn't even have moderating privileges. I had to control the shitstorm on my chat box somehow.
Yeah. Look, when it comes to like controlling chat boxes, a lot of people take the tack of like ignoring them. Ignoring them or only registering whatever they care about. Because have you ever no, this is a loaded question, Jesus Christ. Have you ever seen V's chat?
V's. I've never seen V's channel, to be honest. I just heard about him after the whole TSF incident.
Yeah. And
Which kind of I was supposed to have a video up last week, but I decided basically I would take like a quick break to kind of process the whole thing when I found out, because I actually recorded that video a couple days before I actually put it up. It's a big habit of mine. Like I'll record the audio and then like I'll forget to like edit all the stuff over it and for a couple of days. And
I'm just getting started and I'm totally lazy. I've made 2 videos and all they are me talking to the camera, but I'm saying very good stuff, so you should all subscribe. No.
Yeah,
look,
there was a lot of good stuff on there was a lot of me talking into a camera, although I have a bit of difficulty with the camera because as an autistic person I have a tendency to stim, and I stim a lot on camera, and it's just like it kind of brings notice to like what I'm doing. So yeah, it's more like I just kind of am self-conscious about that. So when the camera's off, I can
from what you're doing. Sorry,
yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but you think it distracts from what you're doing, what you're trying to say.
Yes.
That's fair enough.
If I had a way to capture some gameplay, I could probably put my propensity to play video games to use. Put Dark Souls in the background while I talk. Instead, you just get a boring image.
Yeah, I've been thinking more and more like, how do we get around it in a way that's not like too much effort? Some people, they go the whole 9 yards. They'll edit together videos, they'll have screenshots, they'll have memes, they'll have jokes, they'll have GIFs, whatever. I mean, maybe it's not a GIF in the video context, but you kind of know what I mean.
The visual stuff is actually the visual stuff used to be more of a pain in the ass, but I mean, then I basically found another app to basically edit my videos, and it cut it down to like a quarter of the time it used to take just to like put things together.
What can you tell me about that? Because that's actually interesting to me, and that might even be interesting to whoever might ever watch this.
The thing is I don't have a PC, so everything that I do is either like I host Hangouts on my Kindle because I can't host them on my phone, but I record videos on my phone. So like I have to record the sound on my phone, I have to edit all the stuff on my phone. If you look back to a lot of my older videos before I actually bought the non-free version of Cyberlink, which also is a PC program, so if you bought it for Android, I'm pretty sure you could probably get it for free on the PC. But yeah, it'll actually say it because there was this little thing that like I couldn't remove unless I paid for the whole thing. But I mean, my last video I put up was literally I had me playing Pokemon on an emulator on my phone, and basically that was the background, and felt like it was less boring than my picture.
Okay. Well, but speaking of video stuff, it's interesting because I just got Virtual Dub, and that's what I've been using, and it already like kind of looks ugly and unintuitive, and I think it even has. Oh wait, I'm hearing an echo all of a sudden. What's that about?
Oh, that was looping back because I have to turn the volume down on my phone so that I'm monitoring the chat on my phone while I talk through my Kindle, and I'm not a professional at any of this.
Okay.
But we've got like 2 viewers right now, by the way. So, you know.
Oh, we do. Well, I think one of them is me and one of them is you or something, because I'm watching it.
It doesn't register when you watch yourself, but yeah, now it says one watching now.
Hello, person, say something. Make us feel like you're not just like a creepy lurker.
I meant my channel. Like, it doesn't register me because I'm the person who runs the channel. It definitely will register you. So you're literally just speaking to yourself right now.
I'm the creepy lurker. That's great.
How does it feel to be absolutely insane?
I kind of know. It's all right. It's not that uncommon when you look at Twitter. Yeah, I had a good.
On Twitter.
I had a rollicking good time. I was bored. I wanted entertainment, and I also slightly wanted to take out some sort of aggression on someone who. Look, even when people who have like a real contribution to make, they'll still go and do something like useless or negative, and I might criticize them. But when it comes to finding the person to like just have fun pissing on them, a random troll who uses terrible reasoning, has no followers, has no life apparently, and is actively saying that, you know, the Manchester bombing, that doesn't matter because MGTOW, and I'm not even in. It's that he was that bad. He was saying, oh, all women and almost 99% of men condone it when females commit perjury. Therefore, Manchester, who gives a fuck? Let them die. They were girls. That is what this guy said. I am not kidding. Go look at my Twitter. You know, that's another plug for myself. Go look at my Twitter. Find this guy. See the shit that he was saying, and see the shit I was saying back to him. It's not the highest class trolling ever, but I was trying to get him to like apologize for not saying like 100% of men also condone female perjury, and he's like, no, I don't condone female perjury. And I was like, aha, but have you actually, convicted a woman of perjury? I don't believe you. Actions speak louder than words, man. You have to bang a gavel at a woman before I'll believe you.
I have not convicted a woman of perjury because I have not had jury duty yet.
Yeah, it's like, Jesus. I love, but I love, he was saying stuff like, I know that every single woman in America, is okay with women committing perjury. And then he said, and he was talking to some Israeli girl, and he was saying, well, I don't know about every woman in Israel. It's like, wow. Just imagine, for the sake of fun, that a troll actually knew the opinion of every single woman in America, and this was like his magic power. but he didn't know anything about the women in Israel. I just love that so much. I love that.
I went to look back at your Twitter to actually see if you were to try and see this tweet, and I came across the one. I saw that you streamed with Lonely Wolf 1980. I've had him on my channel quite a few times. He's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, no, I like Troy. We can say Troy, can't we?
Yeah, I've called him Troy on streams. He's called himself Troy on stream. It's no big deal. Mainly just trying to plug his channel.
I've just got to plug us on Twitter. And hopefully we might get someone who joins us. Feel free to speak up in chat if you come along. I don't know. I feel lonely.
Send them the Hangouts link. Send them the link to join the Hangout. Oh, yeah. That would be like hell, because I've got to make sure to have this done within an hour and a half. Otherwise, my grandmother's gonna get pissed at me because she has to work in the morning. So I gotta make sure that I'm not waking her up. And unfortunately, her room is literally 2 feet. The door to her room is 2 feet away from the door from my room. So it's
okay.
Not exactly. It does. Basically, just talking at a normal level like I am now is enough that it would basically disturb someone in the other room if they're. She's also very sensitive to noise when sleeping, so.
Sure. I was thinking. There's a number of topics we can go on. What did we say on? Here we go. I mentioned a couple of ideas. We can talk a little Dark Souls. We can talk a little philosophical anarchism. So one thing I've been meaning to ask you. Actually, let me give this a little bit of context for why I want to ask it. So way back 5-6 months ago, I had an idea, and it was actually really fortuitous. It was on November, so it coincided with Movember. And I thought, hey, I know what's a really fun idea for a stream. Let's all get together and read for charity this amazingly shitty fantasy novella.
Yeah, didn't you read that on Tim Blake's channel?
That's right. That's what we did. And a whole bunch of people were interested.
And I was on the other stream with Skeptor.
Yeah, Skeptor didn't like that idea. Now, this is very much suspicion, and anyone can disprove me if they know, even Skeptor. Sargon showed up on that stream.
Yep, I do remember that, and I was basically I was the one who talked to him the most, and then basically when Tim Blake came along, we both started saying a lot of things making fun of Sargon, and I mean, I think he had bad internet, but I like to joke and say that we made him sad and left. He left.
No, I think he got. To be honest, I think he got very bored and just sort of dropped out.
He probably was bored. I know that he was having internet problems through part of it, but I mean, I like to joke that me and Tim just we made him frustrated and he left, even though that probably isn't the case.
I have to be honest. My reading of the situation was well, look. First, Sargon's first instinct was who is everyone? Oh, you're American anarchists. And he's like, oh, I can be, I can, and his idea, if you go back and listen to that stream with Skeptor, Sargon's idea was, let's all have fun making fun of American Anarchist and his views. And, okay.
I was gonna stand my ground on that one. Like,
You tried.
like,
look, let me put it this way. He was pressing you hard. He was very unsympathetic and sort of just trying to make fun, right? And it wasn't even fun because it kind of just looked like bullying, to be honest. And I'm not saying, oh, bullying, blah, blah, blah. Sargon's a big guy. He can deal with someone looking at his activity as a little bit shitty. I don't fully judge Sargon. Occasionally he says a good thing or two. And sometimes he says a lot of stuff. Mostly he's just screaming from a pulpit.
For the most part, it didn't really bug me. I kind of still managed to have fun on that stream, which is funny because I basically never talked to Skeptor before that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it didn't really bother me, except it was like, it's like you expect me to explain something that's based off of hundreds of years of philosophy. Like, I can't sum that down into 5 minutes. That's literally something that, like, lectures, like college lectures, tend not to, like, cover in one go. It's not because I don't understand it. It's because there's several different... there's so many splintering ideas about it.
I have two, like, main, well, more than two, but I'll bring up two issues with it. So I became interested, well, okay, I've heard of anarchism. A couple of people have recommended it to me. Some people, you know, like Noam Chomsky, are sort of in support of anarcho-syndicalism or whatever. The thing is, I don't know that much about it, and I don't know if I should investigate it because, you know, an anarchist will come up to me and say, hey, check out our anarchism and do all this research and stuff. You know what? Like a Muslim could come up to me, or a Christian or whoever, and say, hey, check out our belief system and do lots of research into the theology or whatever. It's like, I gotta have a bit more to go on to know whether to invest my time in it. And I'm a little more interested in something like anarchism than I am in, like, Judaism or Hindu or whatever, even though maybe those things have some interest to them if you look at the right stuff. I don't know. But my opening issue with anarchism is, how can a movement that is so reliant on complex understanding gain real traction in society when that's an inherent problem? Like, yes, like Christianity or Islam, they can get very complex, but you can embrace them on a very simplistic level too. So there's, like, a potential problem there, that if you have to actually understand a lot of jargon and background and different philosophy contributing to the idea to really get it and really become a part of it, then that's a problem, man.
I mean, I can definitely give, like, I could definitely give, like, an introductory kind of, like, I can give you some information on it, and enough that, like, it could pique your interest. I mean, that's kind of what the whole point of my channel was from the start, was to kind of talk about anarchism and talk about it from less the philosophy and more about the practice, how many anarchists may view one thing, but also pointing out that anarchism is a diverse philosophy is something that I feel like should always be pointed out. You have some people who are more of the insurrectionary spirit, which is, they are very critical of syndicalists. And even the philosophy of syndicalism, or a lot of syndicalist organizations, like the IWW, for example, they don't really have, like, an ideology litmus test. Basically, you just have to fit, like, a few conditions, and almost none of them really are ideological in any way. It's basically, are you working class? So it's stuff like, are you working class? If you're working class, you can join with us.
That's kind of an interesting way. Like you're excluding people who are middle class and people who are upper class.
Well,
Why?
it depends what you mean by well, upper class. It depends on what you mean. Okay, basically, the main restriction is that you can't be a guy who owns a business, because the IWW is essentially like a union. You have to work. So, I mean, working class might have not been the proper word for it, but you essentially just have to meet the conditions of like not being an owner. Basically, the same kind of conditions that you would need to be in a union was that you don't own the company. If you own the company, you can't be in the union. But essentially, the IWW functions as a union, but it's not a union for like one company. It's just a generalized union, and it's based structurally off of anarcho-syndicalist philosophy. But you don't really need to have that deep of an understanding to be part of anarchist praxis. Antifa is an example of I know that a lot of people are going to like scrunch at Antifa, and I mean, I don't know what your position is on them.
All I've heard is stuff from people who hate Antifa, and they make an interesting case that Antifa is. I haven't heard like the pro-Antifa itself, but like from the impression that I've got, they're just another category of like leftist extremist.
Well, there's an issue in that distinction is that, one, a lot of Antifa are... The problem with Antifa is that Antifa isn't an actual organization. This isn't... Antifa generally is a lot more insurrectionary, and there are non-anarchists who are part of Antifa. But Antifa essentially
I'm not saying much about the overlap between like anarchism and Antifa. I'm more just saying that which is Antifa and can, you know, I don't want to talk about like the gray areas around what we're exactly going to define Antifa. I mean, basically acting like Antifa, like going and turning a shitty, you know, white nationalist whatever demonstration into a violent one. Thus making the white nationalists look good. I don't think that's good tactics.
What I was going to point out is that Antifa isn't a one specific group, which makes it very hard
I can accept that.
to categorize them.
I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that there are organizations that identify as Antifa. Like, just because an idea is a bit generalized and there are multiple organizations that adhere to it, maybe they adhere to it in slightly different ways. You wouldn't say, if a capitalist came up to you and said, hey, you know, not every, you know, there are lots of institutions that are capitalist. Like, you wouldn't accept that as a defense, would you?
Yeah, I'm trying to. No, I'm not trying to defend Antifa with that. I'm trying to go deeper to explain the differences in tactics between how Antifa functions, and also point out some of the reasons why Antifa may respond why they do in specific situations.
What's the justification of turning shitty but non-violent rallies that kind of spout their own propaganda against them by like saying garbage like, you know, we must secure the future for the white race and our children, or whatever that stupid slogan is? If they're saying that shit, most people look at them and go, we have I mean, it's become such a devalued slur, but we have Nazis. These are Nazis. Let's just ignore them. They're full of shit. But when you go and attack them, you get stuff like, what happened? Didn't Richard Spencer get like a lot of opportunities to speak as a consequence of, and like spread his ideas as a consequence of getting attacked? I question the tactics.
Yes, but at the same time, the goal was not to prevent him from speaking. A lot of it was more to inspire the left. Now, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about the punching of Richard Spencer. I definitely don't have sympathy for Richard Spencer getting punched in the face. But at the
Well,
same
it's a
time,
legal stance. It's like, do you think it was legal? It's a principle stance about whether you believe that speech, like, even let's take a really extreme example, like shouting fire in a crowded theater, which is the classic, right?
yeah,
That should be illegal. Now, let's say you're in the position of dealing with that. Is the right response punch the person is shouting fire, or is the right response counter it, like say, no, there's no fire, this person is lying, this person's lying, no fire, no fire? That would always seems to be like the better choice. And I think that kind of logic extends to pretty much any, like, I'm sure there might be some like example you could think of, but generally speaking, it's the law that deals with such things. It's people's response to what is actually like being said or whatever, and it's the by whoever's making the, let's say, the negative statement, and it's
I would
also
say
the counter
personally,
that are the best
um,
responses to the negative statement.
I mean, personally, I would say the best response would actually be to remove them, not necessarily punch them, but to be like to remove them from the movie theater so that they cannot further agitate the situation.
That's
Basically,
arguable. That's arguable. There is a good distinction though still between punching someone in the face.
yeah,
They can still sort of and restraining someone and getting them outside of an area where they're causing trouble or whatever. There is a distinction between that. And I'd have to look at Richard Spencer's case, but it was not, as far as I
I would have
know.
to. Same thing here. I would have to look a bit deeper into specific situations because I myself have been part of Antifa groups, and in my experience, I haven't been the Antifa were not the agitators. We basically went for a counter demonstration, and in cases like that, it has gotten violent. But at least in my case, I've been physically attacked first. I don't
Okay.
immediately respond by attacking someone. So, I mean, it's very much a case-by-case basis, and I would say that's part of an issue of being not as organized is that you can't really keep track of like who's doing what. I would have to look deeper into what happened. Like, I know that a bunch of people have brought up the bike lock thing, which I can't tell you exactly what happened because I don't know what happened in the situation. But some things that I've heard is that
away from Richard Spencer. When you say that you've been attacked first and you went to a demonstration that, let's say, was not the Antifa that started the violence. Let's just say that that's the case. In that case, Antifa is protesting another protest in a way that is like legal and you're basically countering a message that you disagree with, which, so long as you avoid certain pitfalls of the law and try to do it well, I don't have a problem with that in and of itself. But this is where the question becomes almost a universal question of every group and every ideology. Everyone has to make a decision about whether a group or ideology is for them, whether it's a net positive or a net negative, whether it's harmful. I mean, Antifa, I've heard bad stuff about it. I've not heard the full story, but that still creates an impression where I'm like, oh, I'll stay away from that. And just taking the action of speaking against Nazism, why do you need to be Antifa to do that? Lots of people speak against, you know, white nationalism, white supremacy stuff, KKK, all that sort of thing. Lots of people are against that already. Why? That's basically all I can say.
I mean, I know this is this is kind of a cop-out, but, like, I don't think you actually need to be Antifa to speak out against Nazism specifically.
Sure.
But at the same time, I would argue that that specific tactics that Antifa use can be helpful to, like, defending yourself, since basically in most cases with Antifa protests, although in America it seems like, and I mean, even from the media, it kind of, like, convinces me sometimes, like, that maybe this group did something wrong. But then again, with the media, even the media doesn't have the full story, so it's kind of hard to know what's going on. But basically, in my experience, which is kind of anecdotal, kind of anecdotal. It's the definition of anecdotal.
Yeah.
So basically, at least from, like, my experience, basically we prepare knowing that there may be violence. We don't intend to incite violence, but we prepare just in case it happens. And we also specifically take the stance that if we see people getting directly harmed by the other group, that we are going to, like, try and protect those people. Like, if we see some gay people getting beaten up by Nazis, we're gonna try and help those gay people get out of the situation.
Okay.
It's basically the whole idea behind Antifa is this idea that you are specifically doing it to protect people in the moment, even if the consequences may be negative later, because which
do you think that
obviously some issues that may arise from that.
Case to be made for de-escalation, though, because in a way, like you say, we go into these. But,
I do think
okay, that's probably good. But if you're going into events with this, we think there may be violence, so we'll prepare. The attitude kind of becomes very like, that's a lot of the rhetoric that gets thrown around between nations that are having saber-rattling competitions. And, you know, we're just preparing, we're just defending ourselves, we're just asserting ourselves within our rights, blah, 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 blah. There is a case to be made that, well, why don't you just avoid all of that as well as you can, because it's garbage and it's not really going to lead to a great outcome for anybody. Look, I don't want to get too bogged down in Antifa. In a way, I'm more interested in the ideology, because it's the ideology that is what attracts people to a large extent. And it's the thinking that the ideology creates that leads to the actions as well. So, I mean, we should probably consider both, but anarchism, as far as I can understand, one of the basic ideas is authority has no inherent value, right?
That's probably not exactly how it goes. I would, but then again, I can't read your mind on what you meant by that. But
okay,
I'm going to say that essentially, but authority is something that you are bringing up that I think is something that I should bring up. Basically, what anarchism seeks to do is anarchism seeks to question all hierarchy and basically holds hierarchy to a burden of proof. It says, you've got to prove why this hierarchy is justified. what justifies this hierarchy.
Okay.
So in specific cases, like let's say a child runs into traffic and the mother uses either asserts authority or physically.
You don't even need to finish the example. I see what you mean. Like authority, as in like a master of a skill trying to guide an apprentice to learn. That's an exercise of authority. Blah blah blah. Like I get it. That's not an idea. That's not an idea that I have a lot of problem with. That authority, hierarchy, whatever, those kinds of things, they need to justify themselves on better values than just asserting that it's the authority, therefore it's right. Like, so this idea would be counter to something that historically you could think of as like feudalism, the noble class, the belief in, the authority. Like, you see what I mean? Like, that would be going against that, which would kind of be a good thing. What is the extension, though, beyond this questioning of the inherent value of authority or the forcing authority to justify it itself?
So there's I know I'm immediately going to jump into the communism on this one, but in capitalism, for example, what specifically has the business owner done inherently to have the right to essentially choose how much he pays you, even if you're working in a business, you're obviously getting paid, or whatever you're getting paid is less than what you're actually making for the boss. But what work did they do to justify getting what they took? Like, if you're a minimum wage worker, let's say a burger costs $2 where you're working and your job is to prepare burgers. You're probably going to prepare, if it's like a fast food place, you're probably
I can already
going to
follow this argument, and it's something that I've thought about. I want to, if I may, kind of skip ahead. So a question is brought up about people earning, like people having, shall we say, through their actions, earning rights to, say, a certain kind of treatment or a certain kind of reward or whatever. Let's break it down even further. I mean, this is a video that Armored Skeptic did recently, and it's not like he addressed the question fully. It's a very, very big question. But a lot of this kind of thinking is predicated on the assumption that human beings have free will, ultimately. That you can make choices. But this really breaks down when you investigate the nature of reality. And more my thinking is we have no good identification of what free will is. We don't even really have a very good definition of what it is. It seems very possible that there's a form of determinism or a form of almost entirely determinism, but a tiny bit of randomness.
I'm actually going to say I personally am a determinist. I have come to the conclusion that I am a determinist based off of, this is just going to be a little small sidetrack here, but I thought that this would be a great thing to bring up, is determinism because determinism and fatalism are not the same thing. Fatalism is top down and determinism is bottom up. Basically, my position is that because you cannot divorce your choices from your experiences, from what's happened before. And so basically,
well, it can even be mechanical, like because the universe functions according to certain laws, everything within it essentially just acts according to these laws. Now, there's a very, very important addendum to this, which is an open question, which is, well, what if random chance is a part of the functionality of the universe? That's very possible. I mean, the super-duper physicists have been showing that we can't actually determine everything at the micro level. So maybe there is an element of chance. We're not sure.
Yeah. Well, I
But
mean,
it
again,
appears
determinism
that
is
when you operate on our level, determinism
yeah,
is like a probably it's a reasonable thing to say. Determinism is like 99 etc percent of what is going on. The problem is just that we don't know enough information to be able to draw accurate conclusions all the time.
yeah,
Now, but this is really important. If you are making decisions and these decisions are nothing but the factors going into them, which, how do you define control over these factors? Like, you didn't control your own birth, you didn't control your own experiences. In a sense, you're not even controlling the processes. Is possibly an illusion. So this brings us to a questioning of both the right and the left. Which, and the right loves its personal responsibility, but the question becomes, what is personal responsibility? Is it suddenly making the choice to go out and be John D. Rockefeller when you're a lowly homeless person? Like, yeah, theoretically you could make all the right choices, but you're not going to, because it's probably very likely that the
a lot
deterministic
of
outcome or the semi-deterministic outcome is not going to be this John D. Rockefeller outcome.
yeah. Some things are going in order to, if you're a homeless person, in order to become John D. Rockefeller, basically you'd have to have all the right things fall in your lap, and
It would
like you
take
don't make
so
things
much luck,
fall
so
in your
much
lap.
information, so much determination, so much self-control, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because this is actually, I thought of determinism, and then I realized that there's the important addenda of the possibility of probability being part of the functioning of the universe. But I realized, like, things don't just suddenly change into something else on a whim. They're functioning according to their laws, therefore choice is like suspect. So using it as a justification for why we should just say, well, too bad you're not working hard enough, blah, 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 blah. What I think is what we come to as making decisions about responsibility and choice making and blah, 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 is it becomes useful to, responsibility is not a true reflection of reality. It's a useful framework to create because it has positive outcomes to hold people responsible in certain ways. If you know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So what it comes down to is we should not be moralizing. Well, moralizing, Christ, isn't that a word that's going around these days? We should not look at choices as like, you're a bad person because you made a bad choice, and therefore I will judge you. Like, what even are we judging? Are we judging their ability to make choices? What is that ability? Prove it exists. We're just judging that a bad outcome happened because someone did something. It's a good idea because it has preventative elements. It has like prevent further damage elements. It has all these kinds of things. But I don't really believe in the moral nature of holding people accountable. To me, it's just a useful decision to make. So when you say, like, to bring it back, you've got the businessman, what did he do to earn this? Well, he took whatever steps to be at the point where law and society recognizes him as the owner. And the question more becomes, what is the harm? What is the problem with this whole structure of everything? It's not like moral. He made choices, but do those choices mean that he earned the business? Well, that's not what we should be focusing on. My personal opinion is that you should structure society to have a healthy regard for and a balance between, and this balance is negotiable and debatable, but some balance between libertarianism, freedom as a goal, all that stuff, and human happiness, feelings, benefit, ability for people to reach their potential. You strike balances between these two extremes. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, what is what is the proof and validity of the theory that breaking down all these hierarchies in whatever way anarchism is suggesting, why is that better? Why is that better? It's a big question.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to. If you've noticed, I'm not necessarily the most articulate person, which can make it very hard to like debate things like this.
Debate things on the ball. When the reason I brought up the idea of authority has no inherent value, right?
Yeah.
That's a really useful idea to me, that you don't judge authority by like it claiming to be authority. You judge authority by its outcomes.
Yeah.
And that is a useful idea that I associate a bit with anarchism. Maybe that's completely inaccurate. I think it's semi-accurate, at least, right? When it comes to like breaking down the capitalist order, it's like, why theorize so much about something that appears to be impossible? Because you would need to gather probably an incredible amount of power, an incredible amount of public opinion, any number of things to really execute such a thing. My general opinion is, I cannot really theorize with lots of individuals running around with lots of need for diversity of approach. So capitalism, one of its strengths, unfortunately, I don't love capitalism, by the way. I just try to acknowledge what it is that it creates, and this also destroys efficiency, because you have all these different companies trying to do the same thing. So you have, this company with product A, company B with product B, company C with product C, and so on, all doing essentially the same thing. This is like a lot of duplication of effort. You're going into creating their own version of the product, like different, I don't know why this comes to my head, but different programming languages, different computers that all do the same thing, but it come from a different company. Like, you all had to put in all this effort to design it. Why don't we all just design one? But then you run into the problem of diversity, which is sometimes if you were to consolidate everything and say, let's all just focus on building one really good computer. When we look at stuff that, like Russian engineering a bit, like the USSR's kind of engineering, they often had problems because they were very much like, let's all just make one size fits all stuff. And it didn't work out fully. There are weaknesses to that approach. So those strengths and weaknesses of like consolidated, centralized stuff, and like spread, diverse, many people trying to do the same thing but maybe a bit differently kind of stuff. There are other pros and cons to capitalism too. Because I don't have a solution, and because I don't see, even if I had a solution, how to implement it, I tend to say, let's just take what steps we can to use the biggest platform that humans have, like individuals have, to affect companies, which is the government, and create a kind of social democracy. And the part of this reasoning is when you look at, say, the Scandinavian countries, they have a very healthy, that's giving it too much praise. They have a very high degree of capitalism going on within their societies. But they control it, they regulate it, they have all these other elements. It's easy to do business in these countries, but these countries also, I don't know exactly what mechanisms they use, but I do believe they hold a lot of their companies to a high standard. And this creates a culture of high standards that further perpetuates itself. And unions are very, very strong in these countries. And unions are protected by government. And the interactions between unions and companies are mediated by government. And the government says, look,
something America desperately needs.
Well, yeah, this is what I'm pointing to. And funnily enough, I read this on a right-wing blog saying, hey, the Nordic countries, they're not, socialist democracies. They're a social democracy. Like, that distinction matters a lot, and maybe it even does. But it actually got me thinking, hey, this is actually really good. So by trying to clarify that, no, we don't want socialism, maybe it's social democracy that's really good. I'm saying, actually, yeah, social democracy, that looks really good. So let's drop the socialism and just be a social democracy. It looks really nice. Statistically, when you poll the members of these Scandinavian countries, they just they come out on top on so many levels. They're happier, they feel more free, they feel like there's an absence of corruption. There's a whole bunch of metrics that are just like top of the charts, like health outcomes, which is really good. So if you leave like stuff like education and health, which are really basic building blocks of human equality and opportunity, to the hands of the private sector, you get shit. Like, it doesn't work. But if you leave that in the hands of governments, and the government does it effectively. This is my big problem with the right. They ideologically believe in small government. They don't think, hey, maybe the question is not how big or small the government is. Maybe the question is how well the government does its job and what exact jobs are suited for government. This is my thinking on the whole situation. Does it seem reasonable?
It seems reasonable. But it's definitely better than a lot of the things that I deal with from a lot of right-wingers. I have a lot of right-wingers in my family, so like I'm normally dealing with the like, oh, capitalism is so great, and privatize this and privatize that, and get the government out of my Medicare. Except for the fact that Medicare is literally funded by the government.
Well, yeah. In my country, Australia, we have probably not, quite as good as an overall system as the Scandinavian countries. But we are not far off. We're somewhere between America and Scandinavia in terms of how we run our society, essentially. We do have a pretty good level of basic free public healthcare that is funded by taxation. No one is unhappy with it. Like, there's not a debate. Even if the right-wing parties, and they make their little attempts to try and privatize a little bit more and take away just a little bit, and usually it's pretty unpopular.
Well, I mean, it's ironic because even if you ask a Republican here and you basically, if you ask them what they think about Obamacare, they're going to be like, I fucking hate it. But if you go and you describe the program to them without calling it Obamacare or without calling it by its name, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's exactly the system we need. That's the system. Or in fact, we might even need to improve it here to get rid of costs. And it's like, you do realize that that's literally the Republicans are trying to prevent that from happening, right?
That's actually a good point to bring up, and that is, and this is something that Chomsky has brought up to his credit. Again, I like to take a bit of distance with everything. I have my own sort of semi-ideology that I might, be a proponent of on some levels. That's for other people to make judgments about. But I am very cautious about adopting other ideas or fully supporting some other person. I take it in degrees. I don't just swear fealty and then everything they do is right, everything they do is wrong.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. People basically swearing fealty to a movement, an ideology, a bunch of people, blah, blah, blah. If we bring this to recent events, the thing I've been noticing is, okay, remember when Thunderfoot made his video like, fuck you, I'm quitting, right?
I don't even watch a lot of these people because I dismissed them a while ago. Like, I'm never going to watch their content. Their content doesn't interest me. I mean, it has to interest me.
The thing is, though, I take an interest in it not because entirely I agree with it. The point is, I'm thinking it's gaining ground, and It's some of it is actually new criticisms, new ideas, new cultures, and I find it all very fascinating. Sometimes it's just disgusting and horrible and toxic, and I wish I didn't take such an interest in it. But
well, I mean, occasionally I'll take a look at these people, but I don't like watch them all the time. In fact, I've kind of been, I've noticed that a lot of the times when you engage in political YouTube and you look at a lot of it, if you're doing it constantly, it can sometimes be very stressful, and you sometimes just need to take a break from it. I mean,
sure, that makes sense.
I mean, I've done some of my two. I had two earlier videos. Like this was like within like the first 10 videos I made on my channel. I had like two of them on Davis Arini, and I have two of them on the Golden One. Although the Golden One, he's kind of a lol cow. Like, if we're gonna be honest, he as an individual,
I think I'm familiar with him.
he as an individual is like completely harmless, but he has the absolutely most like he's got. Are you familiar with like Davis Arini and stuff?
Can't say that I am.
Basically, with the Golden One isn't like a Nazi, but he is a white nationalist. I mean, I don't think that distinction necessarily needs to be made that much, but
it depends. Like, a Nazi is like, Nazi is sort of and I almost back away from my own use of the term, only because Nazi refers literally to a particular political movement that is now in existence.
Yeah, I mean, it's a distinction.
What you're doing is comparing someone to the Nazis, and I always feel like that's like a bit of a cop-out to just compare someone to a Nazi. White nationalism is a more accurate description of the problem, and they take a lot of inspiration from the Nazis, sure, but lots of, it's a very minor point, and I shouldn't actually bother to debate it.
There were other non-Nazi white nationalists, but yeah, I mean, the point is still. So basically, he's like a white nationalist, kind of he has not like described himself as a specific type of white nationalist. He just kind of describes himself as Team Europe. Like, he's pretty ridiculous. He's a Swedish guy who's so much of a nationalist that he lives 1,000 miles away in Ireland. Yeah, I mean, I find it funny.
Chopin was a great nationalist for Poland, even though he lived in France.
But I mean, he's really like, basically, he's just kind of an idiot. If you look at his channel, most of his stuff is like, it's basically like, it's clear that his ideas are very toxic and horrible. But at the same time, you can't help but pity him.
The thing is, every single person in this online sphere is acting upon their beliefs. To put it even more technically, but even more accurately, they're proceeding from axioms, right? Axiomatic thinking. Like, I have to say this is true, and I have to say this is true. I have to say this is true. Then I'm formulating ideas based on that, based on what evidence is exposed to me. I try not to judge people too harshly. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, should I spend my time on this or not? Not like, this guy is bad, therefore I hate him, and therefore I will ignore him and downvote his videos, blah, 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 blah. Because every ideology, every side can descend into toxicity, simply because they cannot acknowledge when they're wrong. It's like, it's that old problem of being sort of pure in your ideas, sure, but then to actually implement them, you have to make compromises on so many levels that all it ends up being is a competition of different ideologies, and the only real difference between them is not that really the basis of the behavior. It all becomes about spread, propagate, expand, conquer, blah, blah, blah. It becomes a difference in just the particular way that they do it. And When people call other people idiots, it actually makes me think, why do people call each other idiots? It's not like, oh, this guy's an idiot because someone called them an idiot. It's like, why is everyone online calling everyone else an idiot? Obviously, not everyone is an idiot. Obviously, the problem is we're all proceeding on different axioms. Therefore, we believe other people's conclusions are wrong.
Yeah.
And if you will, my basic belief system is actually like, we don't have any tiebreakers. We don't have any real knowledge. We don't have any like basis on which to say you're wrong, I'm right, beyond the fact that we've asserted some axioms and worked some stuff out from them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was
sorry, I just really want to get this out.
Yeah.
The problem is that we are not honest, that we are inventing axioms and proceeding upon them. We may be right, we may be wrong, we do not know. And my whole philosophy is built around the idea that if we do not know, then we have to try and find out. We can't just say, I'm going to declare that this is whatever is meaningful or true or good, right or wrong. And that's what religion did a lot of years ago. They just declared it. They just declared it. And if you say declaring it is good enough, what's the difference between any ideology? How do you choose between them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, then again, when I was talking about the Golden Ones being an idiot, I was talking more about outside of his political ideology. I mean,
okay.
So and it's more of like he's just kind of like a lot of his like ideas are just based off of like the stuff that you would see in like Skyrim, like based in like high fantasy. Like he's one of those people who clearly like I'm talking about someone who clearly lives in a fantasy. Like I would not call Davis Arini an idiot.
Okay.
I mean, I would say that like I disagree with his ideas. I do think his ideas are wrong. I think they're abhorrent even.
Yeah.
But he's not by any means an idiot.
Okay. The thing with idiocy, though, okay, that's actually you making a good distinction there, in that you suspect someone to be an idiot based on a lot of evidence that points to the actual mental deficiency, right? Everyone is also calling each other idiots when they're clearly not idiots. They're clearly making mistakes or acting in the course of loyalties to ideas or whatever. Like, so many people got on Thunderfoot's case, right, about, and it was kind of a minor point, like misattributing stuff to Sargon. More of the point was not that this individual within this movement is, not taking accountability. It's more like, if this is a movement, you have people saying, we hold ourselves up to certain standards, blah, 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 and yet you have a lot of other people in the movement who are, let's face it, maybe their particular actions are not endorsed by the group, but a lot of stuff, other individuals, but they're all kind of more or less working together, communicating, doing hangouts, chatting about the same ideas, reinforcing positions, reinforcing their own narrative, together, acting together. It's a group. It's a loose group. It's a group where people say, I want to be judged for my own actions. And that's actually a good thing. Everyone should be judged for their own individual actions. But with Thunderfoot, the real point was, this is becoming a tribe that acts in a tribalistic way, and it's becoming negative. Therefore, I don't want a part of it. And as to whether he was misquoting Sargon or editing streams, he has made the judgment, and he tried to show some of the basis of that judgment. You can nitpick that, and maybe you're even going to make some correct nitpicks, some technically correct nitpicks. Are you answering his essential question, though? His essential question is, are you guys negatively tribal? And should anyone who hears this message of the question, should they consider whether it's negatively tribal and perhaps leave, perhaps try and change it, perhaps try and improve it, let it fracture into the better people and the worse people? Like, I would frankly think, if he wants to take a part in all the politics and drama, He enjoys it. He feeds on it. He gets subs from it. It's his angle. It's his angle, and he admits that's it, that's my angle in his high nasal voice. And it's like, how you? Let's separate you out then. You're not really the intellectual element. You're not really the serious element. You're the bullshit shitposting element. Skepticism would be, even if you would disagree with the whole skeptic TM movement, it would be better with less bullshit shitposting and extreme like aggression towards lots of people. Like,
Well, I mean, shitposting can be fun sometimes, and I think it's fine
sure,
to
it's a
indulge
question
in
of
it on
degrees.
occasion.
I indulge in it on occasion. It's a matter of like, 10% shitposting, 90% content, or
I
50-50. 50-50 is too much.
I shitpost against other anarchists and other communists on occasion. Some who I even like personally, but it's just kind of like, it's, to me, shitposting in some cases is just fucking around. But I mean, you shouldn't always be fucking around.
Well, it's also the mixing of the message with the shitposting. So much.
Yep.
It's a form of dilution. It is like in an academic paper, right? They're dry, sure, but it's good that we have academic papers free of shitposting. And look, there was literally a shitposting academic paper recently that sort of showed how stupid a lot of social studies gets by making all these ridiculous claims about penises, and it was rather funny. But that's a different thing. I mean, like, within the course of someone really putting forward an idea, they don't shitpost at the same time. That's a good thing. That keeps the discourse just a little bit clearer, a little bit easier to understand, a little bit more like, if I'm always taking a minute to laugh and see humor, sort of distracting my brain from like thinking about serious implications of what's being said. It's this mixing all the time. It's like, I'm not against it, absolutely. I just think, dial it back a few percentage points. Is that a reasonable? Yeah, we agree. I think
that sounds very reasonable. I mean, the thing is I may not agree with like individual points, and I kind of have to like process it. The reason why I'm not like immediately jumping on these points is I kind of have to like process these points before I can like actually.
Oh wait, we have some people coming along. I didn't even notice. Hello.
Oh yeah, someone said I keep an eye on. So Swamp Cleaner said I keep an eye on these groups to see how they manipulate the audience. Talking about the right-wing groups from earlier.
Okay.
I don't. They're like this guy Dope X and Bu asked, "What are your thoughts on the recent Manchester explosion? Who do you blame?" Which really,
I would take that up.
You would definitely have to be the one who responds there, because I actually don't know enough to say who's to blame. Literally all I know about the explosion is that it happened.
Okay. Let's address that a little bit here. So, who do you blame? In a very literal cop-outy sense, I blame the particular people who made took the action. Okay. Now, what should the response be? Is the question. I think it's very important to take the broadest view that you can with taking it all in, because people using one incident to say, okay, now let's do all this stuff to Muslims. It's like,
but
okay,
but they were all women, Josh. You don't get it. They were all women, so therefore, fuck them. I am a mixed.
Oh yeah, that's that glorious Trump supporter. And his name was Trump supporter. I'm not even kidding. No, Trump fan. Same thing. And okay, who do you blame? Like, it's like blaming an ideology is a really weird thing, because I can say my ideology is Christianity and then go punch someone in the face. Then do you blame other Christians? Or or do you blame? Because that is kind of legitimate. That gets brought up. Is does the Islamic ideology contribute to the actions that these people make? I hate to say it, but it looks like it is a factor. It makes that lefty tolerancy PC part of me cringe, but at this point it's like it's not a good ideology. It has problems.
I think ideology in a lot of cases just generally can I think ideology just in general influences people regardless of what it is. I mean, I'll admit that anarchism definitely influences a lot of my actions, influences how I see things. It's a lens that I look at things through.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not going to say that Islam doesn't play a role in it. But I would say that this also doesn't mean that every Muslim is all of a sudden going to turn into a murderer. Not all of them are going to go out wielding bombs.
The most humane way to resolve, I mean, the archetype that we have is the de-radicalization of Christianity, which was a very long and difficult process. Christianity, if you go back 1,000 years, you know what? You would have, just from the information of 1,000 years ago, you would look at the world of Christianity, the world of Islam, and say, Islam is going to win. It's going to be the dominant thing. And Islam, I hope it does, because it looks a lot less barbarous. That's the impression I get from history at that time. But history unfolded very differently, right?
Yeah.
History unfolded very differently. And Christianity became it went from witch burnings, inquisitions, and we know if Christianity could easily be acting like Islam if it was in a different position and if history had gone differently. We know that there's a lot of similar ideological stuff in there. Maybe not exactly the same, and people can make a case that Islam is a little bit worse ideologically. Okay, sure. But it's the process of de-radicalization and basically getting people to ignore the shitty parts of their ideology, just like a lot of moderate Christians ignore. And we know this. We know they look at a Bible passage saying, let's do something that's really terrible, and they just say, fuck it, I'll just ignore that. Really, we know that's what a lot of Christians do. We basically need to get a lot of Muslims in the same mindset. That's part of the solution, right? That's part of the solution.
I mean, I also don't think it helps when the U.S. goes and decides, you know what, we're going to take your oil, and if you don't give us your oil, we're going to invade you, and we're going to overthrow your leaders, and we're going to destabilize your government. I mean, that probably doesn't help people who live there. You're ostensibly making things shittier for the citizens. Like with the Iraq War, we did not go in there with good intentions. I do not care how bad of a guy Saddam was. We were not.
He was a bad guy, but that was not the reason that the invasion happened. That is not the reason the invasion happened. It was a claim that was shown to be false, that was shown to have been known to be false, and then they completely changed the message. I was always amazed how no one ever pressed them on the fact that it was all about the WMD and then it was all about the liberation, and no one pressed them on that. They just let them get away with it. It was so ridiculous. But anyway, I don't think a lot of the foreign policy of the US and other nations, I don't think that it helps either. What we have to acknowledge, though, is the full spectrum of factors. The full spectrum of factors. Which is why going and saying... it's people saying Islam has nothing to do with the problem. Christ, it does seem that way. I mean, people who are very far removed from foreign policy of the U.S. I mean, you can make arguments that they are, but Jesus Christ, let's take a little bit look at they will literally have journals and thinking and writing and evidence that Islam was part of the process that made them extremist. Like the actual, they will quote the Quran verses. They will say, I was a bad Muslim and then I became better. Like, to put this all on U.S. foreign policy is like not correct, not a full picture either. It just isn't, is it?
Well, I mean, yeah. Also, I think looking at you both have to look at the internal factors and external factors. Imperialism is an external factor. U.S. imperialism definitely does not help the situation. It, in many ways, galvanizes the situation, and then there's political. There's a lot of There's a lot of nationalism within Islamism. Islamism is kind of fueled. Islamism is basically fueled by this Islamic nationalism, which becomes popular because of external factors.
And that's also a slight distinction between the religions of Christianity and Islam, in that Christianity was a bit like it. Of course, like a lot of doctrine was built around, the nobility is sanctioned by God to rule. Like there was stuff like that, sure. But what's the word? The church was also very much like it's a different institution. Like, for better and worse, Christianity developed into a very hierarchical, very centralized religion, and Islam was more dissipated and spread and didn't have that kind of centralization or hierarchy. There are a lot of ramifications for that a smarter, more knowledgeable person than me can tell you about. But
it also took less time to. It took less time to split off than it did for Christianity. Literally after.
Actually, my knowledge. So quickly insert. My knowledge of Christian history was that there was a lot of splitting. It more came down to the fact that the Catholic Church just remained quite dominant and did a good job of crushing its opposition. Islamism, for whatever reasons, could be geopolitical reasons, could be slight reasons involved in the holy literature, whatever. It split down the middle a lot more, and that has consequences.
Well, yeah, I mean, Christianity in recent years split more than it did or split more from Catholicism than it did in the past. But there were definitely splits even at the time. I mean,
sure,
even
we're just
before
clarifying history.
But yeah, sure. I mean, Islam is not all Islam is Islamism, but but basically with
not Islam is Islamism.
Islam kind of split after the death of Muhammad, where it split into the Sunnis and Shiites, the Sunnis and the Shiites, which might I say, that sounds way too close to Shiites.
That's just a quirk of linguistics. Don't make too much of it.
So
we
basically,
don't know. I don't know if the Sunnis are worse or the Shiites are worse. I have no information.
So basically, Sunni is actually a bit more popular, but basically they split on how do you essentially proceed, like what happens after Muhammad's death. It's quite funny. They can't agree on what happens after Muhammad's death, whether we go with his lineage and the people who descend from him and they essentially take the reins and lead it forward, or whether you should have elections. Or I can't exactly remember which is which. I would have to look into it again.
Yeah.
But
I think it's so weird because all of this is about how do we deal with Islam? How do we deal with Islam? And it's a really freaking hard question. And anyone who says the simple answer is, restriction and taking away rights and don't let them in and blah, 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 blah.
You know,
is
response
I don't believe that a lot of people who are advocating that are thinking about the full consequences of their actions, of those actions rather, because it will lead to more extremism. Like, if you're saying don't let any more in, are you saying evict everyone that's here? Are you saying that if you either evict them, there won't be problems, or if you keep them and they become like second-class citizens, basically, there won't be problems? There'll be problems either way. There'll be problems every which way. We have to ask very maturely, what set of problems do we want? Terrorism is very serious, but it still needs to be kept in perspective. And I'm not sure, like, the whole thinking of let's curtail human rights and freedoms to try and deal with, violent acts that happen. It might be that we have to say we will not, on principle, do this. Now, you can argue about the pragmatism of that position. I personally think it's very inconsistent to identify one ideology and treat it as a second-class nature, because there are a lot of ideologies that have problems. Like, do you treat cults like that? Do you treat? I'm not an apologist, I hope, as much as I'm just trying to say, Christ isn't a big decision to make. There are so many implications whichever way we go. I think using terrorism as an excuse to heighten a surveillance state has been used. Like, we have a precedent of
Wait, can everybody else hear Josh? I can't hear him. Everybody else hear Josh? I can't hear him. Oh, just heard myself back. Oh, this is weird. I think there might be something up with your... Let me try something. I can't hear anything right now. Oh, this is weird. I think there might be something... Shit. Oh, I really hope we don't have to call it a stream because of my... I wonder if something like happened to your mic or I mean, not like a mic that you're wearing or something, but some technical difficulties. Shit.
Hello.
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay. Are we good? So we're good now. I'll take it.
Yeah, it was just weird. Mid-sentence, you just started to like, it just your audio went completely off, and I'm like, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, look, something weird happened. Like, it's very hard to know which part of the process broke down, but maybe something to do with the stream itself.
Yeah, you know, Google's been known to suck ass sometimes.
Yeah.
I've I've run into plenty of these problems before. Although I am going to say that we probably need to like wrap up the stream within like the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of need to get ready and go and do something myself. It's been interesting. I don't know how much we got accomplished, literally, but I guess we got to know each other. I guess we got some discussion.
I mean, we can always do another stream.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you for whoever is watching this. Cheers. Watch it. Wretched watchers. And thank you to anyone else who comes along later on and goes through the whole bloody thing. You're a patient person.
Well, there's a lot of patient people if they watch my channel in general. My channel isn't exactly the most stimulating. It's not the most.
That's because you're not poning SJWs. You're one of them.
Well, I mean, even then, I'm not poning anti-SJWs either. I'm usually responding to stuff or speaking about my own opinions on things.
Yeah.
Talking about anarchist philosophy. Probably even going to expand beyond the moniker. I know I did one critique video, which was funny because it was actually, I intended it to be a series called Anarcho-Feminist Critique. But, you know, some things just fall through sometimes.
Yeah. You know, actually, if we can really quickly, I wonder if you can answer the question really quickly. Because Sargon brought it up, and it also made me think. The question of how can you guarantee rights without something like a state? What is the apparatus to do that?
This would definitely be a hard one for me to articulate.
It is a hard one.
I mean,
it is a hard one.
There's definitely there's some issues.
Some issues, yeah. Look, I would implore everyone, because I talked about it before, to do a little research on the social democracy model of Scandinavia and not necessarily judge it within an ideology, just kind of take each action for itself, because the specific actions of actually still letting a lot of private enterprise run around and do its thing kind of contradicts socialism, but at the same time, it's not like it's laissez-faire. It's very, very, like, the state takes a very active role in a lot of things, but the outcomes appear to be really good. So that's kind of what I advocate for, more or less. And it seems to be something that's implementable. Although in America, Christ, there are so many people who are so radically against the state ever doing anything except for bombing people.
Unless the state's bombing brown people, the state is worthless in the minds of basically every American conservative, who at this point it's starting to look like American conservatism is just white nationalism everywhere else.
I wouldn't go that far.
Not completely. I'm exaggerating. I just want to.
There's a very interesting question about why there is a left-right dichotomy, and it appears that it's a grouping down along the lines of sociological factors. Sorry, sociological. I actually mean psychological factors. Like you find traits of conscientiousness are more dominant in the right, which is. You also find that traits of creativity are more dominant in the left. And the question is, does society kind of need both? I almost wonder whether we kind of need both, but we need them to be better than, say, they are in the particular case of the US, because there are big problems with the left and the right. They're kind of, you know, the left and the right in Australia is certain. I hate to brag, but the left and the right in Australia just does not function or debate or care or treat a lot of issues as controversial the way the States does. It's just a higher standard.
It's funny that universal health care here is a controversial issue, despite the fact that it works literally everywhere else.
I can tell you also, abortion, barely an issue. Gun control was sorted. Like, there is a micro party with like 0.5% of the popular vote that cares about getting guns back. No one gives a fuck. Everyone is like, guns? No,
Well, I mean,
thanks. It's a good, better world without them.
I'd be within that small percentage because I feel like at least if you're ideologically consistent as an anarchist and you believe that the state is oppressive, that you would want to at the very least make sure that the state isn't the only thing armed.
Okay, should private individuals have nuclear weapons? If they
Obviously
can make
not.
them?
I don't think the state should have weapons either.
Then libertarianism is not absolute. Therefore, we're arguing about degrees, and therefore we're saying, you know, you can't have a nuke, but you can have a gun. I would go, you can have a knife, but you can't have a gun because you need a knife to cook. and some people are like, oh, you shouldn't even have knives. You should have everything soft. No one should own anything dangerous at all.
You should have a rounded scissors. I mean,
rounded scissors, yeah, with the safety stuff.
My thing is that basically, I do advocate for responsible gun ownership. Like, basically, I don't think everyone should just like go out and get an AK-47. Like, there's obvious.
At best, I believe in extremely high regulations for guns and a depopularization of the culture. That's otherwise, I'm basically don't have them.
I mean, I personally would like the state to have less of them, to be honest.
That's also
and I mean,
that's
if
also
the state
a good
has
thing.
less of them, the people need less of them. But I mean, I do think that
I just want to answer a question Swamp Cleaner brought up. Sorry, isn't Australia basically green versus neoliberal? It's funny. Do you know that the right-wing party in Australia is called the Liberal Party? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yes, actually, I did know that.
Sorry, well, I mean Swamp Cleaner, but yeah, the Liberal Party is basically just a very moderate pro-business party. That's kind of how I think of them. They're a bit more complicated than that, but they don't really stand for much anymore.
Okay.
Well, you know, they're not like,
it sounds a lot like the U.S.'s Democratic Party, to be honest.
Yeah, like if I had to say, the liberals here are probably to the left of the Democrats there, even though they function more as a right-wing party than anything else. But that's a whatever. But the Labour Party is the main left party.
Back-asswards. I mean, you guys are on the wrong hemisphere, but at least you're not completely back-asswards.
No, we're actually, it's pretty remarkable because we've had very few radicalizing factors in our development. And I think that's created a very good nation in the end. Like, there are problems. There was, you know, we were basically treating our native population the same way the Americans did, but on a smaller scale, which is a bad
you
thing.
definitely inherited that trait from the British. I mean, that was where it came from for America.
That's where. Well, I mean, everyone was doing it. Like, the French were like that. The Spanish were like that, as far as I know. You know, convert or kill or give them poxed blankets and such. And just to, isn't basically green versus neoliberal. The Green Party is a much bigger political player in Australia than it is in the US. The Greens actually hold Senate seats at the federal top level, and they have a lot of other positions where they're a significant threat, or at least, or even in power. So we're not quite as like diverse in terms of parties as the European countries, but we do have like a third significant party, which is the Greens, and a few other ones, but they're a bit smaller. It's a very interesting political landscape.
At least you guys don't have a UKIP that managed to push.
Oh, we have our UKIP. We have One Nation.
Well, I know you have. I was going to say you have your UKIP, but at least your UKIP isn't as powerful as Britain's UKIP.
Oh, yeah.
Britain's
well,
UKIP,
that's the point.
Britain's UKIP doesn't have any Senate seats, but they managed to push Brexit through. Brexit was 100% a UKIP idea. There was no Lexit offered. Lexit was not what we were going to get, which is why I wonder why any leftist would have voted for Brexit under the conditions that we were getting it under. They should have known that we were just going to get more neoliberalism. It was basically just going to switch shit from the European Union. Like, I mean, leftists have their problems with the European Union as an entity, but like ultranationalism is not an idea that we support, and we would abhor ultranationalism more than our problems with the EU.
See, I believe in judicious nationalism. Like, when I say judicious nationalism, I just mean support the country when it does good things, stand against it when there's a problem. The whole loyalty thing, it drives me nuts. Even though, in a weird kind of way, I can almost anticipate that staying aloof of everything also has its problems. And thank you, Swamp Liberal. You knew the liberals were the liberals. Fair enough. Sorry to condescend slightly, but I just wasn't sure.
Did you call him Swamp Liberal?
Swamp Liberal? Maybe I did. That would have been a funny slip. I meant Swamp Cleaner. Swamp Cleaner. Swamp Liberal. Swamp Liberal. Now I think of a political cartoon. But anyway, you said that you needed to wrap this up, so I'll certainly respect that. So thanks for people who tuned in. Thanks to people who will go and watch this. Check me out if you're interested. I'm pretty easy to find, I hope. Otherwise,
I will put the link in the description later anyway, because I kind of set this up on like I kind of set this up in as quickly as I could.
Yeah, cool. And Dankeschön for that. And if anyone wants a brief idea of what I'm about, I'm more about the quality of the discourse than actually taking a side. I find the philosophy to be interesting rather than picking up on every little event and drama and news story that comes up and using it to score points. That's kind of my angle. If people have suggestions about what they'd like to see, speak up. I'm interested. I don't want to sell myself too hard, but I don't feel like, just being completely passive and just hoping that the YouTube gods smile on me is the right thing. So I think we all need to be open and honest about the fact that we're sort of seeking to grow or seeking to get our ideas out, and therefore we have to take steps. Like, let's just be honest about that. But I'll try and be modest as I do it, and I'll try not to shove down anyone's face and be a prick about it. I don't believe in asking people to like and subscribe at the end of videos.
You won't shove your prick in anyone's face either, will you? Unless they're in.
I beat you to it.
They need consent first.
Yeah. Even with the delay, I got there first. I was like, only if they want it.
Yep.
Anyway, that's a good note to end on. Cheers, man. It's been nice.
All right. See ya, everybody.